If you're watching Husbandry, make sure you subscribe right now, because today we're unpacking one of the most overlooked and powerful soil systems ever to come out of Old World farming. For the next minute, stay with me as we explore a compost method that generations of rural families relied on long before anyone talked about carbon to nitrogen ratios or aeration charts. This method doesn't need a thermometer. It doesn't need a fancy bin, and the best part is that it never needs turning. It built the foundational soils of some of the most fertile farming regions in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, not through constant management, but through thoughtful layering and patience. And when you understand how it works, you'll see why modern gardeners often struggle while old-world farmers built soil quietly in the background without a shovel of effort wasted. Understanding where this method came from shows why it works so reliably. Long before composting became a refined science, peasant farmers, village gardeners, and rural households created what we now call the static compost bed. It went by many names depending on the region, from midden garden beds to manure straw heaps, but the principle remained the same everywhere. Build a bed in layers, let the microorganisms handle the work, and avoid disturbing the breakdown process. These households didn't turn compost because they didn't have time. Every scrap of the day was spent on livestock, fields, repairs, and harvest. So instead of forcing oxygen into the pile manually, they built the bed in such a way that air naturally filtered through the structure on its own. What made the method reliable was not laziness. It was design. Old-world farmers layered coarse materials at the bottom, denser materials at the top, and always topped the stack with a protective cover to manage moisture. The result was a compost bed that heated evenly, decomposed steadily, and produced a rich, dark humus that rivaled anything we produce today with constant turning. To understand why this compost never needs turning, the structure is everything. The bottom layer always consisted of something bulky and airy: sticks, rough stalks, pruned branches, or chopped brush. This layer acted as the permanent aeration zone. It didn't break down quickly, which meant the pile never compacted into a suffocating mat. Air moved upward through these channels naturally. Above this went softer organic matter: straw, weeds, grass cuttings, and vegetable scraps. Unlike modern compost that mixes everything together, old-world compost relied on deliberate stratification. Each layer served a purpose. The coarse layer gave airflow. The mid-layer gave bulk. The top layer, usually thin livestock manure, partially rotted bedding, or food scraps, brought the nitrogen that kicked off microbial activity. Because nobody disturbed the pile, the microorganisms formed stable colonies. The heat rose evenly without collapsing pockets. Old farmers noticed that every time they turned a pile, it cooled down and lost momentum. By leaving it alone, they allowed slow, steady heat to do its work month after month. A modern gardener can replicate this bed easily by starting with the right base. One of the simplest ways to apply this method today is to select a spot where you can dedicate one location to long-term soil building. A corner of the garden, the edge of a field, or even the space behind a shed works fine. Start by laying down a base of coarse material several inches thick. This base is the heart of the no-turn system. Without it, the pile compacts and fails. Then begin adding layers as you generate them. Grass clippings one week, chopped weeds the next, kitchen scraps after that, followed by a thin layer of manure or animal bedding. Old households never waited to assemble a perfect set of ingredients. They added whatever came from daily life. The consistency came from the layering, not from curation. To keep moisture levels ideal, many Old World farmers covered the bed with old sackcloth, straw, loose hay, or even soil. This cap stopped the pile from drying out and prevented rain from turning the top into sludge. You can replicate this by adding a loose mulch cap or even covering it with cardboard. Well, this compost bed, it enriches soil faster than people expect, mainly because it breaks down continuously. You see, one advantage of never turning the pile is that decomposition becomes a slow but uninterrupted cycle. Turning, on the other hand, introduces cold air, disrupts microbe colonies, and dries out half the materials. But with a static bed, it builds from the inside out. Heat builds slowly, moisture stays constant, and fungi take hold early, something that's often destroyed when turning too frequently. After several months, you'll notice that the bottom of the bed begins to look like soil instead of scraps. In the old days, farmers would simply pull the finished compost out from the sides or bottom with a fork, then keep building the pile upward. You can do the same. Just, slide a shovel into the lower layers and harvest the dark, rich material. The upper layers stay untouched and continue decomposing. A practical example of its efficiency is seen in gardens where soil is poor or sandy. Adding static compost year after year transforms the topsoil layer into a moisture-holding, nutrient-dense environment. Root crops grow straighter. Leafy greens become darker and fuller. Even fruiting crops like tomatoes and peppers gain better resilience because the steady humus addition improves structure without shocking the soil. This method remains valuable because it requires no machinery, no turning, and no waste. The Old World compost bed became the backbone of many rural households because it aligned with a lifestyle of necessity. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was rushed. They didn't treat composting as a side project. It was simply another quiet system working in the background. For modern homesteaders, especially those wanting a low-maintenance approach, this method is one of the most reliable you can adopt. It handles constant additions, seasons of neglect, and fluctuating moisture without losing efficacy. The result is a soil-building engine that runs year-round without demanding labour. If this deep dive helped you understand an old method that still earns its place today, make sure you subscribe to Husbandry and share this guide with someone who appreciates time-tested farming wisdom.